Hey cycling community, this is Steve Grusis the Cycling Greek. This is my first time I've done 2 Zwift races in one day. Some time ago, Zwift.com upgraded me to a B, and I certainly don't anticipate them upgrading me to an A, ever. One of the things I like to do after the race and before I put the video together is to look at the age distribution of the racers. We had 23 starters and 21 finishers. So of the 21, there were 1 20-something, 5 30-somethings, 4 40-somethings, and 5 50-somethings. And of course me at 66. On a recent FTP test, my 20-minute power had increased to 280 watts. Still, as you can see, that I'm not the cream of the crop of this group. I had a little slower start and finally I got up to them. So now what I have to do is conserve as much as I can. Pretty much the only way I can do that is riding in the middle of the pack and riding wheels. And that is easier said than done because there's a slight delay in the power that you apply to the pedals versus what Zwift recognizes what you apply to the pedals. That means when I'm moving up in the pack, I have to let off on the power before I go to the front. And I also have to anticipate when the pack is going to start going faster so I can increase my power just a little bit so I can stay with them. Otherwise, I'm going to be yo-yoing off the front and then yo-yoing off the back. Going up this brick or cobbled climb, I'm hoping that everyone keeps it muted at least this first time up. That'll give me a chance to just get my legs under me a little bit. And even though I'm toward the back now, it doesn't look like they're banging up it. And that's totally appreciated. So I have to keep aware of what's going on because typically, especially when you have a lot stronger people in the pack relative to everyone else, they will keep pushing it after the top of that in order to maybe make a break. And there is some pushing going on and I'm still at the back, but I'm still connected. I'm guessing there are much stronger riders that would want to establish a gap after that brick climb so they can have a gap going into the rollers that we're heading now toward. I don't know about the rest of you, but I seem to have an easier time on those rollers than I do on that brick climb. One of the tricks I'll often use on these rollers is to apply a lot of power on the uphill and then rest by dialing back on the downhill. And I believe I'm doing it on this lap. Recently I had mentioned that my 20-minute power increased to 280 watts, and that's actually the highest it's been for a number of years. During this off-season, I made a concerted effort to work on my flatland sustained efforts, and that meant increasing my FTP. Using periodization, I started off by focusing on 2-hour endurance rides. And this is what I called focus endurance rides, always putting pressure on the pedals, using good spin technique and not stopping. After that, I worked up to tempo. After the tempo, I started doing sweet spot. I started with a couple of 20-minute sweet spot intervals, and I worked my way up to 3 30-minute intervals. This past month, I've also started doing sweet spot on long climbs. Now that's going to be harder to maintain in these next couple months because it's getting colder and the rain has started. Also, to help with raising my FTP, I've been spending time in the gym doing leg work, mostly squats and deadlifts. If this is something you're interested in the description below, I'll have a link to one of my videos that I made recently that summarizes a couple other videos where they've done quite a bit of research on the subject. One last thing I'll mention about lifting is that not only am I using it to raise my FTP, but also to minimize my degradation of my VO2Max. Almost half of the racers in this peloton are in their 40s and 50s. So for you, I hope that you take note with what I'm about to say. At a certain age, it had been stated that your VO2max will degrade 1% per year. There had been a study done to look at the details of that. They had found that those that included weightlifting, and I mean on their sports-specific muscles, degraded their VO2max only a third of that. So a third of a percent per year with those that were lifting, that were doing, let's say, squats and deadlifts, versus a 1% degradation for those who weren't. Okay, back to the action on the screen. We are on the brick climb, and I'm using my drafting boost that I got on the at the beginning of the last lap. And you know, you got to be on someone's wheel for it to be effective, and I was, but these guys are going stronger, so then I lost their wheel. My drafting boost power up is still active, but I'm not on someone's wheel. As there's someone to the side of me, in front of me, but I don't know if that counts in this case. So regardless, the power up is gone, and now I'm on someone's wheel. But I'm at the back. I'm in about 20th place or so, 21st place out of 23, and I really don't see anybody behind me, so I'm thinking there's only 21 of us left. There may be somebody way back there, but they're way back there. And now on the roller section, it looks like I'm starting to get tired. And this is only the second lap, so the back is pretty strong. And I'm probably suffering a little bit from the lifting that I'm doing, so that has a cost to it. Still, I'm not ready to give up the lifting yet. When I get into the race season, I will, but not right now. So I'm thinking that these guys are going to slow down a bit. At least I'm hoping they're going to slow down. It looks like they are, and with me keeping up the pace, I'll reconnect with them. So now I'm going to get another power, at least I hope I'm going to get another power up. I so want that feather. Everything else will be, obviously will not be as good. The tractor will help because it'll smooth out the brick, and I have a ghost. That ghost power up is totally useless for me. I'll either use it on the climb or I'll use it before the climb. I just want to use it before we come around again so I have a chance to get another power up. Yeah, the feather's the one that I want. The tractor I can definitely live with, and the draft boost. I have to be on someone's wheel when I go up that climb, so I really have to work at it if I get a draft boost, but I'll work with that too. Of course, I would want to have the arrow on the last lap should I go in for a sprint, but then again, if I'm going to get dropped in the middle of it, it won't be as important. Jumping forward to the climb, I'm at the back of the group but connected, and so I decided to use my ghost power up. Now halfway to the left-hand turn, it goes from shallow to not so shallow, and now of course when we turn left, it gets even steeper. There's a bit of a gap forming to the stronger riders, and as we go over the top, I still need to keep on the pressure so I can be connected. Fortunately, there's others with me in the back in case that gap does widen and then we form our own group. The problem now for me is that I want to go faster, but I can't go faster. I just don't have the legs. And I'm hoping that these guys slow up in front of me. I hope I can grab a wheel, but I'm not grabbing a wheel. There's a couple people behind me, so I don't know if I'm going to be stuck with them and us forming our own group if we get spit out, or if these guys are eventually going to pass me, and then I'm going to be by myself. Right now I'm thinking it's going to be well before the halfway point that I get dropped. I'm also thinking that the silver lining is that I'm going to have a couple people with me. And maybe that rider up ahead, that seems that he's not going to quite make the connection to that group, so we'll see. Looking at the graphics on the right, I'm seeing that the other two are putting a lot more power in than I'm putting in. I want to put in more power, but I just don't have the legs to be able to do that. So now they're bunching up there, and I'm hoping, okay, I hope I make the connection, and I hope I get a feather power up. If I do, that will give me that much more of a chance to survive with them over the next brick climb. Of course, that's assuming that I'm able to connect with these guys. And so far, it's looking like that. Now, if they pick up before I get to them, then I'll be disconnected and off the back. And not only that, I'll be off the back solo. Quickly moving my eyes to the upper left-hand corner of the screen, I see that I have a ghost power-up. Well, that's going to be worthless again. So let's see if I can actually make it to the end of the lap with these guys. Okay, I'm connected. Jumping forward to the start of the climb, I'd move myself toward the front so I can have a little bit of buffer to fall back if I need to. And of course, I need to. People are starting to pass me up and we were on the shallower part of the climb. So as we turn left and it gets steeper, everyone using their power up, and of course my ghost power up is going to be totally worthless. And I'm pretty much at the back. I think there's a person about 2 seconds behind me. So I'm hoping that I can get onto these guys before they really start to drill it, but they are slowly starting to pull away. I just don't have a lot of legs. I was doing 300 watts, but now I just can't maintain that. And so the person, he must have had some problems with his internet because he came by strong, and now I am totally at the back. Technically, I consider myself still with the group. We're stretched out, though, and people are starting to turn right onto the rollers, and I'm still heading toward that right-hand turn. So, not dropped yet, but it's looking like it's going to be imminent. So I don't know if I can technically say that I can finish the first half connected to the group. What I'm trying to do is get up to somebody, so I'll have somebody to ride with, and there's potential that there'll be a group of 5 of us. But if it turns out to be a group of 2 of us, well, I'll take that. Typically, historically, the group slows down when we hit the start-finish line, but since a move is being made here, I don't think that's going to happen. And now that I can see down the finishing straight, it's not going to happen. Things are still stretched out. So I'm with one person, and maybe we can get a hold of those other 3 people up ahead. And having a chase group of 5, now that can make things fun. Jumping ahead to the next climb, we have the table set. We have a group of 16 at the front, a chase group of 3, and 50-something Mr. Clement from Canada and myself in the rears. It looks like Mr. Clement is trying to get away from me. So pretty much for half a race, the last half of the race, this is what Mr. Clement and I were doing. We were trying to drop each other, and in between trying to drop each other, we were kind of resting, spinning along. Let's jump to a little before the brick climb on the final lap. I have a tractor power up, and so I figure this is where I'm going to make my move if I'm going to make my move, and hopefully he doesn't reconnect with me. So now I'm putting everything I can into it. I actually am going above 5.0 watts per kilogram. He fortunately is a little slow to react, so that gives me a little bit of breathing room. I've got to keep the pressure up because it's still a long ways to go to the finish, and typically I'll die out and get passed at the end. That's pretty much my standard history. So I am maintaining over 4.5 watts, and I'm keeping an eye on the graphics on the right to see what he's doing. I see now there's a 2-second gap, and he's had to dial back a bit, and now he's starting to pick up again. When his watts per kilogram go above mine, like it did just a while ago, I do what I can to get mine up. He's now at a 3-second gap. I feel a little bit easier, but it ain't over till the fat lady sinks. It's now at a 4-second gap. Fortunately, I'm able to maintain the gap, and Mr. Clement and I round out the results with 20th and 21st. Because I'm subject to AFib, normally I'm pretty conservative, and after a race, I usually call it a day. But my form's been increasing, I'm feeling good, so I decided to look around for another race, and I found one about 40 minutes away. Now, when I signed up for it, I signed up for the C category. The B crit I just did was just under 10 miles. This road race was about 22 miles, so I figured that going a longer distance with the Bs was not going to work out for me. Also, that my legs were not fresh, and now I figured I was going to be the only one doing a second race in this race. Now, it happened to turn out that all these categories started together, so it really wouldn't have mattered if I signed up for the Bs. And next time I'll pay attention to the start times. Jumping forward just 30 seconds, there was a split, and this split was going to hold. So basically, these people that I were with were the people that I was going to finish with, or at least have the chance of finishing with. I take a quick look at the graphics at the top, and I see that we haven't even gone half a mile. Pretty much that means 22 miles to go. If this was my first race and my legs were fresher, I'd be looking at the graphics on the right to see the gap, and the gap now is about 5 seconds to those in front of us, and I'd be looking at their watts per kilogram and figuring how much I could do. With fresh legs, I would have made the attempt to bridge across, but I don't have fresh legs, so I hung out with these guys. Now, with it being 22 miles to go, I figure I needed to be conservative, at least in the first half. Pretty much what you're seeing now, with a few exceptions, is exactly what we did during this first half. Jumping ahead to the 39-minute mark, we have lost one of our riders and we're down to a group of 3. And so now I decide to do what I was doing during the last few laps of the crit. Do some high-intensity interval work. So this was my first one, and what I wanted to see is, am I going to be able to get away? I really didn't want to get away by myself, but see if I can whittle down the group to a group of 2 of us. Jumping ahead a bit, usually it worked out that within 30 seconds, Gardner would bridge up to me, would hang on to my wheel, and then a little while later, Tash would come screaming by, and he would put in a counterattack. That would only last so long, then we'd be all together again. For the next 10 minutes or so, we were pretty consistent in doing this over and over again. And from that, it seemed like Gardner was pretty strong, and that Tash was the weakest of the 3 of us, and that I had the ability to jump out, at least my timing was good enough, where I can get a little distance in the beginning. At least that's what my failing memory seems to remember. However, on the next time, Gardner's the one who put in an attack. Obviously, I didn't know how strong he really was, but I didn't trust Tash to be able to bridge it with me on his wheel, so I went right after him. And so I'm figuring at this point, maybe we can get rid of Tash. So I'm keeping my eyes on the graphics on the right. He's still within 1 second of us, so he's still registering on our wheel. In fact, here he comes up again, and so I'm thinking, this guy may be stronger than I thought he was. In fact, jumping ahead a bit, I'm just coming back from his countering and putting actually a good counter move. It took me a while to get him, so I'm thinking at this point, I'm going to go and counter him. I'm hoping that my repeatability, which I have not been working on, is better than their repeatability. I'm hoping that will at least make one of them lose contact. That move put the hurt on them. It certainly put the hurt on me. About 45 seconds later, I was caught and then countered by Gardner. So I am getting back up to her wheel, and I'm hoping that when I get there I'll be able to work with her and to prevent Tash from connecting. But I was watching the graphics at the bottom at his distance, and he was coming up on us, soon thereafter. Now he's making a move there, but I don't think that's going to last too long. So at this point, we're all going to just kind of settle in for a bit and gather our lungs and legs. We're now about 17 minutes from the finish. For the next 4 minutes, I didn't put in any attacks. I wanted to rest, but basically I was preventing myself from getting dropped because the others would put in an occasional attack. Now, an attack had just been brought back that was made by Tash. And during the time they were putting in occasional attacks, I was starting to watch when I could do my next counter off of one of their attacks. And this was the opportunity. So now I took a big jump, got a little bit of distance, and now my aim is to keep the power up, keep it steady, maybe keep it increasing a bit past my steady states pacing, so to speak, and see if I can just put the hurt on them and drag the distance out. Well, again, Gardner, strong guy that he is, gets up to me and actually does a counter. So now I'm thinking that Tash is about 1.5 seconds away, so I need to get up to Gardner and then start working with him. If he and I can maintain a strong pace, then we can drop Tash. And at first it looked like this was going to work, but then within a minute, Tash, after laying down some power, rolls up to us. At this point, I was pretty tired. I needed to rest a bit and no more attacking, and it looked like the same for the other two. While we all needed to recover, we also knew that we had about 3.5 miles to go. Jumping forward 1 mile, I'd been working on recovering while trying not to get dropped from the various attacks individually by Tash and Gardner. As I was starting to feel better, I was looking to time another counterattack. If I was able to get separation, this would have been a long solo effort for me, because this is about 2.6 miles from the finish. As it turned out, they reeled me in about 0.4 miles later. And that cost me. That cost me a lot of energy. Fortunately, it cost them a lot of energy too, as they're not really counterattacking. So again, I need to recover, and I don't have a lot of time to recover because the finish is coming up within about 2 miles. With a little over 2K to go, Tash puts in a big attack. Of course I have to respond, but I'm not in fear of him getting away. As Gardner catches, he slows. That's my opportunity, so I take off. I don't have a lot of legs, but this is toward the end. Gardner catches me. So now I'm letting up just a bit because I'm watching the graphics at the bottom and I see that Tash is catching up. I'm sure their legs are similar to mine, but they make an excellent move and attack. 1/2 mile from the finish, there's no long recovery times. I catch up to them, but I still do need a little recovery, so I dial back just a bit. They both see this and start laying down 5+ and 6+ watts per kilogram. I have one more move left in my legs, but how big a move? I don't know. I just figured that these guys are like every other cyclist in the world, a better sprinter than I am. So I figured that I'm the one that has to initiate it from a little farther out, and that's exactly what I do. The finish is just after the right curve. I give it everything, but these guys get the better of me. 2 races, not bad. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always remember, because it helps the channel, comment, like, subscribe. The Cycling Greek.